don't go to see movies very often. This is not a new thing. I know a lot of people have kind of dipped off the going to theater train since the pandemic, but like even before the pandemic, I rarely go to see movies. Anime films are not much of an exception. Not necessarily because I don't want to see anime films, but historically, just because they don't show up around me. No joke, the average anime film either does not appear in any theater near me at all, or if it does, it's this one theater that is an okay distance away from me that I sometimes go to when, you know, I feel like it's worthy. Because yeah, I could travel pretty far away and spend several hours on various forms of transit to get to the very downtown of Toronto in order to go to the Eglinton Theatre or the Scotiabank Theatre or whatever the heck they call it now. And usually most anime films are playing there, but I usually go with a particular rule of I don't want to spend more time on transit getting to the theater than it would take to watch the film. Say nothing of the return journey, so normally I don't do that. And then when my good friend Miles was talking to me earlier this week, and he was just like, so you're gonna go see Demon Slayer? And I'm like, no, why would I plan to do that? It's probably not even going to be in a nearby theater to me. To which he responds, no, actually, it's the widest release of any anime film ever. And I'm like, sure, Jan, because that normally doesn't apply to me. However, this particular time, instead of only being available in the one theater at an okay distance away from me, it was available in 5. So I suddenly had far less of an excuse to avoid going and seeing it. And now, having seen the film, I am glad I did. It should not be a surprise that the spectacle of Demon Slayer is something that fits very well in a theatrical setting, to the point where if someone asks me, should you go watch this film? The answer is, well, technically the answer is yes, with an asterisk, that asterisk being, have you seen Demon Slayer? Because I would not recommend this film, as beautiful as it is, to anyone that has never seen Demon Slayer before. This film is adapting essentially the end of the manga. This is a bad jumping on point, and I don't think that that should be a hot take. Of course, if you have been keeping up with Demon Slayer, if you have seen like all the way up to the end of season 4, you should have already seen this film by now, unless you can't for some reason. But again, we can go back to the widest release of an anime film currently in history, at least for North America. But I will say there is probably some amount of people that have it in their heads being like, oh yeah, but you know, when Mugen Train came out, that was a big spectacle. Everybody said to go and watch that in theaters. And then they turned around and turned Mugen Train into like the first 6 episodes of season 2. So what's to say, or what's to stop them from then making a season 5 and then just making that, you know, Infinity Castle? You're not wrong. And I know I've seen differing opinions on whether or not Mugen Train is better to be watched in the theatrical format or as, you know, the first 6 episodes of season 2. I generally would probably personally recommend just to watch season 2, especially at this point, first of all. And then also, it just gets complicated. I am always down for less complicated ways of watching things. I don't want to say, okay, well, go watch season 1, then go watch this film, and then, you know, skip these episodes because it was covered by I don't like doing that. It's just much easier to say, watch seasons 1 through 4 of Demon Slayer. Very easy, very quick. We've explained it and you've gotten everything. I don't feel like you need to go and watch Mugen Train specifically when it is mostly covered by the show. I don't feel like you need to go and watch the compilation films because, you know, that's covered by the show. I don't know if I would recommend only watching the compilation films. That seems like a bad idea personally, but not having seen the compilation films specifically because, you know, I watched the show instead, I can't really comment. But largely, yes, Infinity Castle is something that I would heavily recommend you to probably go and see, if for no other reason. Even if they do come up with a season 5 and like rework a lot of this film into a new season, watching it on the big screen is worth it. You just got to make sure that you trust your big screen. Right? So I had 3 options ahead of me, technically. I could go to a regular showing, I could go to an Ultra AVX showing, I could go to a VIP showing, or I could have done the aforementioned trip all the way down to downtown Toronto and watched it in IMAX. Which, I mean, from a visual perspective, I kind of wish I did see it in IMAX, but again, I don't know if I would have been able to justify the time to get there or back. So due to reasons, I ended up seeing it in a VIP theater. If you don't know what that is, what is a VIP theater? because, you know, theaters have a bunch of different ways of doing things and taking your money nowadays. The VIP theater is nice, comfy, cushy recliner seats with in-seat food service, and it is an 18+ thing, so no kids allowed, which has its pluses and its minuses. I've gone to a VIP screening before, and I will say people getting their food served to them while you're trying to watch a movie is hella distracting, and not the biggest fan of that part. But you know, after watching all of that footage of the Minecraft movie and people going absolutely insane during a regular admittance showing, I can understand wanting to go to an 18+ showing of virtually anything from this point on. It would just be a matter of make sure you try and find a theater that you know has a good projector. I can't speak too much to the projector that I saw the film with, but I could swear that there was like this light black vignette around the edges of the screen, and it kind of faded the colors a bit around that edge. Not like so drastically that I think that most people would notice, but considering I have spent an inordinate amount of time trying to and unsuccessfully color grading my monitors, I'm a little bit more sensitive to that. Of course, I could just be looking at ghosts, and it's not a problem at all, and I'm just making up problems as I go. So you should go see the film, especially because we're going to start talking about the film now, and if you haven't seen it, you should fix that. So when it comes to my thoughts on the film, the positives are very easy because it is a beautiful film. It is an absolute stellar film. It is the type that, as I mentioned, I understand why you would want to see it in a theatrical setting. It is very much geared for a theatrical setting, especially the first half. The second half, however, or maybe the final third is probably a better way of describing it. Could have been an episode of the anime. Didn't necessarily, I think, benefit from being part of a film. Just happened to be part of the film because that's what they're adapting. That could have been done in the small screen, and I don't think that there would be any loss of quality there. But I think my enjoyment was slightly hindered by my expectations going into the film, which I realize is unfair to the film. I mostly put the blame on Sony, Crunchyroll, and probably Cineplex. I didn't look up much about this movie going into it. I have not read the manga because, you know, I prefer watching it as an adaptation rather than doing the constant comparisons in my head to the original material. I can always read the manga later. And, you know, knowing about Mugen Train and how Mugen Train was released and presented, I kind of went into this film with particular expectations. It wasn't until I got out of the film and looked it up that I realized in Japan, this film is advertised as a part 1, which, knowing that going in, probably would have made things better. I did not know that this was only going to be a part 1. Had I read the manga, I probably could have assumed, based on the amount of material for the final arc, that there was no way in heck that they were fitting it all in one film without doing massive cuts. I didn't read the manga. I had no idea. And at no point did I get any indication that this was supposed to be a part 1. Now, I'm sure somebody would just be like, that's a skill issue and that's my own fault for not looking it up, but really it should have been part of, like, literally the title. Crunchyroll and Cineplex should have put part 1 in the title of this, because it is a part 1. Part 1 of how many? I'm not entirely sure. Technically, they have said that we're supposed to be getting 3 parts, but, you know, I remember how many parts the final chapter of Attack on Titan was supposed to have, and that kind of ballooned exponentially. So I don't necessarily believe them when they say it's only going to be 3 parts. It could be more. We don't know. We'll know when it's done. That's when we'll know. And not knowing that it was a part 1 going into it, I think especially again during that final third, when we're getting all this really great story, this great backstory for one of the characters. I know that technically I'm assuming that you've already seen the film, but just in case, I'm not going to spoil too much. But we're getting all of this wonderful backstory, and I'm sitting there thinking, I've been here for at least 2 hours at this point. We're not getting to the final battle today, are we? And I didn't know this. I didn't, like, then when we get out of it and it starts doing its wrap up and I'm just like, okay, no, we really aren't finishing off this arc today. I assumed we were. I thought I was going in to see a film that had a narrative start and an end and a kind of finality to it. There is no finality to this film because it wasn't designed to have one. From that perspective, I feel like this would have been better as a show, as a season of anime, rather than as a film. Because I know why they did it as a film, is because the spectacle, especially of that first half, is so grand, it is worth having it in a theatrical setting. I get that. But then when we get to the backstory of things and into the weeds of the characters and the narrative as a whole, I feel like it would have benefited from having a more episodic release. So I kind of hope that they do what they did with Mugen Train and turn Infinity Castle into season 5, because I feel like that would allow things to breathe a lot more than they currently do. Also, I feel like throughout the film, they used a lot of flashbacks. And I don't just mean flashbacks to like further showcase to you like things that you didn't know before about particular characters, like their backstory. That's fine. But there was a lot of flashbacks from like content we've already seen as a, hey, so you were reminded, by the way, this happened, which is relevant to this moment. There was a lot of that. And I'm almost wondering, again, not having read the manga, how much of that was for a, hey, just in case you haven't seen all of Demon Slayer, here's the important bits that you need to know to fully understand what is actually happening in the now. And I kind of wish they didn't do that, because from my perspective, who is that supposed to help? Well, it's supposed to help people that haven't watched Demon Slayer. Honestly, they're lost anyway. I do not see a point in trying to help the people that have walked into this film not knowing much about Demon Slayer or only knowing a little bit about Demon Slayer, to the detriment of those who have, rather than just being like, no, this really is just a film for people who have seen up to season 4. Like, that's how it should be. This very much should be you should know who these people are. We should go in assuming you know who they are, because trying to help the people that don't know is just going to make the product worse, is just going to make the narrative worse and a bit more disjointed, because we keep doing flashbacks all the time. And I'm like, no, stop doing that. I don't need to know why these parts are important beyond the information that you haven't told us. Again, that's the difference. When you show us things that we haven't seen before, or show us angles of things or perspectives that we haven't seen to help build a particular scene or event that is happening, that is great. I love that part. It's the, hey, do you remember when this happened? And I'm like, yes, I do. You don't need to remind me. It's that sort of thing that I have certain gripes with from a narrative perspective. And I feel like this film had a lot of that. And I kind of wish it didn't. And that's kind of the thing. I am torn then, because it's like, I agree that large chunks of this film benefited from being in a movie. From potentially a theatrical budget, though knowing Ufotable, it doesn't really matter. And it would have all looked the same anyway. It was just the format. To be able to watch things on the big screen with big sound, to be sitting in a theater with a sound system that makes your chair vibrate, that's all great. But then you get to the moments where I'm like, I really wish we had more time to breathe. And so it does make me question whether or not parts of this film were designed with the knowledge of, oh yeah, no, we're totally turning this into an anime episode later. There were also moments, oh my God, there were multiple times during this film, right, where I was watching it and inwardly my mind was telling me, and that's where the ending credits would be if this were an episode of an anime, because it kind of had that level of build-up. But instead of, getting the ending credits, we just moved on to the next scene. So I do worry. Well, I worry. I don't know if worry is the right word. I do wonder if a lot of this film was designed with the knowledge that it was going to be spliced up into an episodic format in future. And considering they did that with Mugen Train, there's precedent. So if you look at the reviews, though, now of the film, they're very positive, and I understand why. Especially like if you've been following Demon Slayer, you can understand why. From a general audience perspective, though, I'm questioning why the numbers are that high, personally, because we're starting to put this on the table of on the same level of Mugen Train, and like on its own, I don't think I would. If for no other reason than, again, it's a part 1. And I know that I am a crazy person who puts so much emphasis on the endings of things, and we haven't seen the ending of this yet. Which is why I would think that, like, if Infinity Castle, well, assuming they keep the Infinity Castle title for all 3 films, assuming there's only 3 films, assuming that those 3 films as a trilogy will probably be way higher than Mugen Train. But just part 1, I'm like, nah, Mugen Train as a whole, as a film, as a contained bit of story, I think was at a higher tier than this. So to put this on the same level of that, I'm like, why? Why are you doing that? And the answer probably is there's a lot of marketing put behind this, and you don't want people to think that they can skip this film. And you can't really. I mean, if they're not going to make a season of it, you can't really skip this film. And if you want to see it in theaters, which it would be the way to watch this film, you kind of need to go watch it now. assuming you're watching this video of mine when it's still in theaters and it's not out. I don't know how limited the release of it is going to be. You might have already missed the boat on that, to which I say, I'm sorry. As far as like what I thought of the story itself, I mean, I don't feel like I haven't really talked about Demon Slayer much, have I? I did a video on like season 1 back when that came out, but that was like so long ago now. Oh, wow. And overall, I don't think my thoughts have changed largely. I mean, I can just say shonen is shonen is shonen, but every big shonen, like all of the big shonen, have individual variants that make them exciting over others. I definitely think that Demon Slayer is higher up on my list of greatest shonen of all time than a lot of the classics that I grew up with. But at the end of the day, like, I still look at shonen and it's just like, well, don't you get excited about all these battles and things? And I'm like, yeah, no, they were really cool. So is every other battle that they've done. And also all of the battles in these other shonen. It's very hard for me to like rank what do I like about all of these really cool battles. Because I do feel like a lot of the fights in this film are some of the best animated. They are really, really good. I do need to back up though, because a particular thing that I thought of while watching this film, I feel like I need to mention. And this wasn't for the whole film. There are certain times where I was questioning the compositing of particular shots. So the Infinity Castle, because of course you've watched the film, right? You remember the Infinity Castle. All of these like Edo period buildings. I don't know Japanese history. All of these buildings, Japanese style buildings popping out of the world, going in all directions and making this weird fourth dimensional maze of places to go and things to do. Very Inception style, very Doctor Strange style of a world or a dimension that we exist within. It looks very cool. The compositing and like the creation of the Infinity Castle, I think is absolutely stellar. Where I sometimes had an interesting problem with it is when we had shots that, you know, pre-composed the anime characters on top of that. And I feel like some of them gave off an uncanny valley vibe, honestly. How I explained it to myself when I was sitting there watching it, it was like, I feel like I'm watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I don't know if you've seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's an 80s film, so potentially not. But Who Framed Roger Rabbit was this morph and combining of 2D animation and 3D live action. So in that way, I kind of felt like the anime characters of this at times felt like 2D animation on top of everything from the Infinity Castle, which felt like not realistic to a point, but it kind of bordered that to give this weird uncanny valley sort of thing where these characters existed in a world that they didn't really belong to. And I mean, you could take that and run with it and say that, no, that's the point. But also, like, I don't know, it did drag me out of it a tiny bit. It didn't help also that like Demon Slayer has moments of comedy where they move from like the super serious art style to the more comedic-esque art style. I think I remember the mangaka of Demon Slayer saying, on the one hand, they were influenced by like Naruto and Bleach and the shonens of old, which make a lot of sense, but that they were also influenced by like JoJo and Gintama. And you can see that, especially when they try and hit the more comedic beats. And then they move to the comedic art style, but the Infinity Castle is still the Infinity Castle. And there were times where I was like, okay, what is this about? And that dragged me out of it a bit. But then, you know, then the next scene would happen and it would look breathtaking and freaking amazing. And then Mamoru Miyano would just be chewing scenery like a boss. And I'd be like, okay, I'm back in this now. That's all it would take. Just Mamoru Miyano chewing scenery. And I know it sucks that I'm referring to his character by his actor's name, which I know normally I probably almost dock that in almost any other production. Because I'm like, hey, the actor's so bad, he's not really acting as the character. We're just referring to him as his actor's name because that's who he is. But it doesn't matter because it's Mamoru Miyano and he's chewing scenery and I love it. I love that man so much. He can chew as much scenery as he wants. I don't care. Give him all the scenery he needs. But then also, I mean, I think more on it and the deep emotional moments of that scene, of that fight, I don't feel like I was able to properly digest, and I really wish that I could have. God, I'm trying to avoid spoilers. I really shouldn't, but you know what I'm talking about if you've seen the film. And then to like immediately move on to the rest of things. God, I wish there was a break there. I almost feel like that is kind of going to be my overall thoughts on this film, is like, you should go see it, but also wait for the anime, because I really hope they split this up. and give us time to breathe. Because think about that, right? If they had this and it was episodic, you could have that fight where Mamoru Miyano chews scenery and goes up against Shinobu. You could have that fight, and then at the end of it, you could have a whole week to sit with it before, the next episode comes along, and then we move on to our next set of characters, our next big battle, our next fight, our next revelation about relationships and family and all of that. We could have all of that, but we got that week break, because assuming we're not doing a Netflix model, my God, that would be terrible. But you could have that, and then once that's done, then we could move on after another break to move on to the next group of characters and their fight and their backstories and all of that stuff. I do feel like the break between episodic weeks helps so much, because you get to the end of this film and then you're like, oh, right, that thing with Shinobu and Mamoru Miyano. I'm still going to just keep referring to him as Mamoru Miyano. I don't care. You think of that, oh, wait, no, yeah, that did happen in this film. Man, we didn't really get to process that, did we? Oh, well. And it sucks because it's like, it was really well done. It was so many good emotional moments there. And we're going to come back to it, because that was kind of left as a hanging thread that's maybe going to be resolved in movie 2, I think. Again, haven't read the manga, so I don't know the order of operations of what they're going to handle of things. Maybe that might be movie 3 by the time we get back to it. But that, I think, comes down to my thoughts. I loved the film. I liked going to see it. I had problems with the theater, but that has nothing to do with like the movie itself, the creatives that created it, or how good the film actually was. Those are all like meta problems that I can totally blame on the feet of other people, not the creatives of this film. But what I can say for the creatives of this film is, I get what you're doing. It's a very great spectacle. Season 5 when? Because I want this as a show. Because I think that's almost like the best of both worlds. To do the season after the film comes out. Because I don't remember Mugen Train a lot, but I feel like they kind of just yoinked the scenes from the film. And, you polish it up, you change it around, you edit it slightly differently, but you put that into the show. And so you get the benefit of having the footage and having the semi-presentation that was available in the theatrical version. But then you can have the pacing and the presentation and style of the episodic series. And I feel like that makes like season 2 of the anime that much better than it would have been if Mugen Train didn't exist. But Mugen Train needed to exist for that to happen first. So I kind of get that here. And I kind of just wish, maybe the reason why they haven't told us about a season 6, or season 5, sorry. Maybe we'll also need a season 6 by the end of it. But the reason probably that they haven't told us about a season 5 is because they want you to go see the film. And I understand that, but it's like, I'm very good at pattern recognition. I don't think many other people are that terrible at it either. And we all can see kind of the writing on the wall and notice that there's a very high likelihood that we're going to get a season 5 that is just going to be Infinity Castle. Also, they've done it. There's precedent. You don't need to go watch Mugen Train anymore technically because season 2 exists. Yes, feel free to go yell at me in the comments about how wrong I am, and no, actually, you should go watch it for XYZ reason anyway, and then just deal with all the repeat footage. But that's really what it comes down to. I'm happy that I went to go see it. I recommend that you should go see it. But also, season 5 when? So, to sum up my thoughts, you should go watch the movie, especially if you've seen Demon Slayers seasons 1 through 4. If you haven't seen Demon Slayer season 1 through 4, don't watch this film, and instead go watch Demon Slayer seasons 1 through 4, then go watch the film. Crunchyroll and Cineplex sucks for not putting part 1 on this thing, to let everybody know, hey, by the way, it's a part 1, because that's useful information, please. The Japanese did that. Why didn't you guys? And I enjoyed my time despite constantly getting taken out of things. Both for like the compositing of just those couple of shots, but then also the constant feeling that this should have been a show. And I kind of wish it was. I don't know if I will get over that tug of war in myself of both happy that this was a movie because we got to see it in the theatrical presentation, but then also wishing that we had the breathers of the movie, that we had the breathers that are present in an episodic release format. I don't know if I'll be able to reconcile that. Did you guys enjoy the movie? Let me know. I'm kind of curious. I'm very interested. I haven't talked about Demon Slayer in a while, so I don't know how many people in my audience are caring about it. Maybe they are mostly like me for a lot of other shonen things, and shonen is shonen and they don't really pay attention. Maybe there's a lot of Demon Slayer diehards that are going to rag at me for some minor inconspicuous thing of lack of praise, let's say, that I have laid upon this film. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen and others, watch more anime. Stay frosty.